Hello, everyone who may or may not be listening, either now or in the future. This is, I suppose, we'll just call it another episode of Skyline, my podcast where I talk to people, except the ones coming up should be very special in that I'm about to go on a road trip. I'm about to be going all over the place. And I'll probably interview people on the way too if I can get away with it. What's going to make this one and the next one very special is I'm going to be interviewing my parents. So I'm joined today by my dad.
Hello.
My dad, Ray, who is, how old are you now?
I am 65.
65, wow. And I guess that brings us to the first question, which I think I asked you. So I have a few questions written down just to kind of help move conversation along. And also because these are going to be important episodes to me, I feel, even if not right now, in the future, you know? But the first sort of thing I had written down was what your earliest memory is. I mean, you're 65 years old. That's a lot of memory, I'd assume.
Yeah. I have an odd memory of when I lived in Jefferson, Georgia, which I would have had to have been at 3 or 4, probably 4, and was walking in some woods, sort of a dual memory with my brother. I guess we were camping, and I kicked a can of pork and beans down a hill or something, and found out later we were supposed to eat that. I thought it was an empty can, and it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
And then
Would that have hurt your foot, kicking a full can of beans? Or was
well, I didn't kick it really hard. I just kind of
rolled it. Okay.
And it wasn't like I took a full hard swing at it. And and then I remember, I think on the same walk, or at least the same memory of walking back, and I had a toy gun, and I raised it up to shoot at what I believe to have been a buzzard, and I pulled the trigger and heard a gunshot, and somebody with a rifle or a shotgun actually shot the bird. And for a moment, I thought I had shot the bird with my toy gun. So those would be my earliest memories.
That's, yeah, like,
but very vague, non-specific, almost could have been a dream, but I've had those memories for a long time.
Yeah. By the way, I sound further away because I am. I just let our dog back inside. Which Hobbs might join us for the podcast. Who knows? You might hear panting. Who's to say? But I do find that kind of interesting, though, because I feel like your upbringing was very different from me and Mason's. That wasn't where you were way more out in the country than we ever were, right?
We weren't that much in the country. My parents grew up in the country, but we were always sort of in town, in neighborhoods. This was just an area that was behind our house.
Behind the house, okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of your childhood, another thing I was sort of interested in is like, me and Mason, we grew up, we found our interest in a lot of sort of video game stuff and popular culture, like Pokemon and things of that nature. Though, of course, I remember I fished a lot. I fished a bit growing up. We played all sorts of games. But I was wondering, what sort of activities did you grow up with? Like, what games did you play when you were a kid? And growing up in general through grades?
I kind of liked all sports. I wasn't really great at any of them, but enjoyed playing, with the neighborhood kids. We'd play basketball, football, baseball. And a lot of that I remember when we lived in Durham, when I was in kindergarten through 4th grade, and we were right across from our elementary school, so it was easy to go over there and shoot baskets or play baseball on the fields that they had over there. And there were lots of neighborhood kids that played, and just seemed like we were always outside doing something. That or riding bicycles, just
And was that the case all the way up through high school too, kind of situation, or?
Yeah, I remember probably gravitated more towards for fun. Played basketball with friends and stuff. And then by the time I got to be 15 or 16, I started playing a lot of golf. Started playing with my dad and really liked it, and sort of became a passion of mine at that age.
Yeah. So I think that rings interesting to me in that, and this isn't going to be just an episode of, oh my gosh, you're old. But it does ring true to me that, like, back you didn't really have as much TV when you were growing up, for sure. So it makes sense to be a lot more sort of outdoor activities.
Yeah. I mean, I remember watching TV, but TV was a lot different then. We had basically 3 channels, maybe 4 if you included PBS, and TV signed off at some point during the night, probably before midnight. And but I remember occasionally watching a few shows, like Gilligan's Island stands out for some reason.
Yeah.
After school, but it was usually like a snack at home, and then run off and go do something.
Was school particularly difficult for you growing up, or do you have any distinct memories of that sort of thing?
No, school was I wouldn't say easy, but I did okay. The one year that was rough for me was 4th grade, and I had a teacher that just didn't seem very nice, and she wasn't just mean to me. I remember her giving a kid a spanking back when you could do that with a paddle,
They did that, yeah.
and laughing.
While doing it?
Yeah, and
Wow.
she never did that to me, but I had a propensity to talk a little bit in class, so occasionally she would have me
So that's where I got that from.
have my seat be next to her desk. And I also remember at one point that I ended up she made me sit by myself at lunch for either a day or something as a punishment for doing something at lunch. I don't even remember what it was.
So just not a nice teacher there.
No. So, I mean, I did okay with my work, but I didn't have a good year.
Out of curiosity, I don't know if you paid extrinsic attention to it. This might honestly be more of a question for Mom, but do you feel like our homework was more intensive than it was when you were in school? Or even just the education in general? Or do you think it's more or less the same, just different in nuanced ways?
It kind of came and went, and maybe my recollection isn't the same, and you could probably correct me, but it seemed like maybe you had more in elementary school than I remember, but then it seemed like both you and Mason were able to get most of your homework done at school before you came home, particularly in high school.
Yeah, high school.
So I think high school may have been a little tougher, but elementary school may have been a little easier for me, if that makes sense.
I feel like in elementary school they give a lot of busy work.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that. Also, our dog is really wanting attention right now, so if you hear him whine or...
He's doing, like I get on some Zoom calls every now and then, and he does sort of the same thing. If he hears people talking and they're not talking to him, he thinks something's wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, I should be the focus of attention.
Oh, he's right by you're going to hear him pant a little bit probably. That's fine. We'll be louder than his panting. But, and I guess that goes next to sort of, I guess just generally, like, what was your family situation like growing up? Did you like what we did growing up? Visit extended family a lot? Or was it a situation where extended family was all kind of close? Or
Extended family was fairly close, but we lived in Durham, which was in the Piedmont or central part of North Carolina, and most of my parents' family were in farming country in eastern North Carolina. And we would go visit some, but maybe a couple of times a year, if I'm remembering correctly. So probably about as much as you guys did growing up, going out to Arkansas or to North Carolina. when y'all were little. But it was, even though it wasn't very far, it was quite a different. We were kind of going from the city to the country.
To the country, yeah. And generally speaking, like, I don't know if this is a question I have later or not, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Like, Grandan is, I think, a topic that could be just by itself in a podcast, honestly.
Yeah.
Or just that side of the family in general. But, like, I know you had a good relationship with Grandpa, like your dad and your brother. Like, those were all generally pretty good relationships there.
Yes.
And would you say same with your mom, who I know much less about?
Very much so. Yeah, she had passed away before you guys were born. But no, really good relationship with both. I think I benefited from the fact that my older brother was 10 years older than me. And from everything I've heard, they were a little more strict on him than they were me. So I think I had the benefit of that they weren't, I mean, they had high expectations, but they weren't strict. And I don't remember, negative. They just kind of wanted me to do the best I could, and that was fine. They didn't.
Were you ever disciplined in any way, like a spanking or?
Yeah, I do remember that some, and I think a belt may have been involved, but not a brutal type that would leave blisters or anything like that. I just think it was sort of what
would be intimidating.
What they did, and I think the sound of it was more.
Yeah, because not to rat you out or anything, but like me and Mason, we've been spanked before, and you've never used a belt, but I do distinctly remember you can make a really loud noise with a belt.
Yep.
And anyone can do it, really, can make that loud noise.
Yeah.
But it's more of an intimidation factor, and as a bachelor in psych, I don't see it as that horrendous of a thing, but it is a line.
Well, I think, I probably was spanked less than a handful of times.
I would say we were too. Like, I think that's the case too. Like,
it was very much not the norm. It wasn't something that you would constantly dread or anything like that. It was a very odd circumstance for that to happen.
I think more than often a stern talking to usually does the trick.
Yeah.
And some sort of a punishment that is more substantive, like you don't get your allowance this week, or something like that. But
and one of the worst punishments I could get, even at a young age, was if one of my parents said they were disappointed in me.
Yeah.
And it's like that was rougher than any switch or belt could be.
Yeah. Any time I felt like disappointed you or mom or made mom cry or whatever, it's like, oh, horrible.
Yeah.
Not a good time at all. Now, I have stories of extended family and visiting extended family. I remember one time, in North Carolina, we'd go around with the dogs and walk around Uncle Dan's place. I think one time they tried to fry Thanksgiving turkey.
Yeah, we did fry a turkey.
And I remember there was some talk of being concerned about maybe burning everything to the ground. And then on mom's side, of course, we have lighting fireworks when maybe we weren't supposed to. And I look upon that somewhat fondly, sort of a family silly story. Do you have any sort of stories of just when your family would get together and the kind of things that would happen? Or
probably nothing similar to what you've got there. I mean, I know whenever we'd go visit uncles or whatever out in the country, they'd always fry up chicken and have fresh vegetables, and the chicken was fresh too. We probably walked past them.
Yep, I was going to say.
When we first got there, that they raised chickens, and I never, as a young kid, I didn't like that. It always, I think I would eat the chicken, but I never liked the food there. Now I would probably love it because everything was fresh and was good. And I know my brother did like it, and my parents certainly liked it.
When we visited Uncle Dan somewhat recently, and I'll probably maybe talk to him more about it when I visit him, but I thought he said that he didn't like to eat the chicken.
He maybe did not either. I might have been more
He was
self-conscious.
saying he saw a chicken without its udder, like he helped.
Oh, I never
Kill
did
him.
that. So if he did that, I could see where he wouldn't like
That might
chicken
be
at
something
all.
I need to
Period.
confirm
So
with
he,
him, but yeah.
and
Um,
but yeah, that was just a little too close to farm to table for me.
yeah, maybe that was a bit of the city. Do you feel like you were ever made fun of for that by your family, by the way? Like being the city folk?
No, and I was never noticed it, but I could see it wouldn't have surprised me if maybe they had done that with my dad, although my dad was a really strong guy. He played football and he was a center on the football team at Davidson College, so I doubt if they made fun of him, but he
Maybe.
was sort of the city boy
Yeah.
of the
Well, he
family.
was the first one to graduate college.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like just because how much respect I have for Granddad, we should probably talk about him almost in his own episode.
Yeah.
But sort of following the trail of your growing up, so you did golf in high school a lot, and then in college. What did you do? Any other extracurriculars, like an instrument or clubs? Was that as much of a thing back then, like clubs?
No, it was, but I had a bad attitude when we moved from my ninth grade, which was junior high,
Yeah.
at that point, to when I would have been a freshman, or we moved to 10th, 11th, and 12th. So I don't even think they called them. It was just 10th and 11th
Yeah, it
and
was just
12th
the
grade.
grades,
So
yeah.
we moved out into the county. So I changed school systems back then. So I was not going to a city school, went to a county school, and I didn't like it. All the friends that I
You
had
had
grown up
made.
with were going to Durham High School. It was a much rougher high school in a lot of ways, but I didn't like things out there, so I did about as little extracurricular as I could. I just went
Yeah.
to school, and also found friends that were probably equally not happy with the high school. It was not a very, it was kind of a childish, immature way to be. And I wasn't destructive about it. I just didn't let myself enjoy certain parts of the school.
Fair enough. Now, was it high school or college when you went to the beach during the summer? Was that college?
Actually started in high school. A friend of mine and I, we would go to the beach in the summer, but I think one year, maybe our senior year, we went to the beach instead of going to prom.
That's right. You told that story because growing up, we were never the biggest fan of school dances, and I remember you told that story. I'm like, that sounds a lot more fun. And so that was high school prom. So what was that like? I know you've told a bit of this story before. Like you could tell how long the Canadian students who would come down the beach that way had been there by how sunburnt they were.
Yeah, there's at Myrtle Beach. I don't know if they still do it, but back then they would have Canadian days, and it was sometime about a 2-week period, if I remember right, in May. And they'd put Canadian flags out for whatever reason. I guess that's when they would come down, and it was before most schools were out. But yeah, they were either really as white as you can think, or they were beet red. No in between. So it's like they either just got there or they'd been there a day or two.
Yeah.
But they were very friendly, and we had a good time with the Canadians.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you don't have to go into much detail, I suppose, but was it just sort of hanging out, like beach fire, like bonfire sort of thing, or was it like you didn't like surf or anything like that?
No, we would stay at the campground, so we'd hang out there, and beach.
Was there a lot of like meeting strangers there and just sort of saying hi?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and back then you could drink when you were 18. You could have beer and wine.
That's right. The law was different. Yeah.
When I turned 18, we'd just walk around and have a good time. But on the beach. We did body surfing, which would be like boogie boarding, but without a boogie board. You just kind of
Just lay
stretch
down and
out.
stretch down.
We
Yeah.
wouldn't take boogie boards or anything like that, and didn't um, ever try to stand up on a surfboard. So we would do that, just hang out, and Myrtle Beach is got lots of little miniature golf things. But and when I really got into golf, now that we're on Myrtle Beach, I'm getting off the subject a little bit, but Myrtle Beach has tons of golf courses down there. Tons of golf courses. A lot of people from all over the country will vacation there to play golf. I would go there to not play golf. It would be, I'd go down with my friend, and it was sort of my way of getting away from golf, because that's what I did all the time.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of funny, going to a place known for golf to get away from golf.
yeah.
Sort of to wrap up at least the younger parts of your life in terms of talking about it. Who knows, who might come back. Hans, I get it. You want attention. Like, kids have like dreams and stuff, things they want to do. Like, I want to be a zookeeper for a while, or different aspirations. What sort of dreams did you have growing up, or like things you really wanted to do with your life?
As a little kid, I don't really remember. I was fascinated with pro football for whatever reason. So I may have, as a little kid, dreamed of that. But my youngest recollections of what I wanted to be was, when I got the golf bug, is I really did want to be a professional golfer. But that would have been from 15 on. But was also smart enough to know that, it's difficult, and want to get a good education and have something else I could do if that didn't work out. Hobbs.
I'm going to stop petting you if you're going to keep being jealous about it.
Does he need to interview you?
Yeah, maybe. Speaking of college, I know you switched college a little bit.
Yes.
Because college for the most part is, of course, the college experiences and things like that, but like finding out what kind of career or major you want to go into, what was that decision-making process like? Because, well, first of all, what influenced your choices of which college to go to first? Because I know you switched college. What?
Yeah, I mean, my whole college choice is almost a podcast, but I was going to go to North Carolina, and had talked to the golf coach, and my grades and everything were good enough. They didn't need any special attention on that. So I did not really apply to too many schools. I may have just applied to North Carolina originally, or just a few schools. Well, and this also seems hard to believe, but something got messed up with my transcripts. They sent the wrong grades to Carolina, and I didn't get in.
Oh, wow.
So sort of scurrying, and I guess to sort of show that they didn't, we contacted actually the athletic director at Duke, and I got in Duke. So you can't get in Duke and not get in North Carolina. That usually doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But I'd also applied and taken a visit down to LSU. The golf coach down there had actually worked at Durham High School ages ago as a basketball coach or whatever, an assistant. So I'd made my choice to go to Duke, and the golf coach that was there when I grew up that sort of taught me had retired. Their new golf coach was a nice enough guy, but I was used to, whenever I was going off to play in a junior tournament somewhere, the older coach would come take a look at me on the driving range, and just if I needed any tweaks, but usually just tell me everything looked good, go play good. And I tried to get the new coach to do that, and he was busy, which was, now that I'm older, is understandable. He had just started there.
Yeah.
And I probably wasn't like nagging him. I think I probably just mentioned it once, and he didn't come out. But it made me mad. and just got, and that was part of it. But the bigger thing was, I think I started thinking that I sort of wanted to. I thought that was the easy way out for me, was to stay at Duke, because I'd grown up playing the Duke golf course. I was really known around there, and it would not have been a stretch for me to stay there. And I guess all those different factors involved, and I just decided at the very last minute to go to LSU. And my parents let me do that. So much last minute that I had to register late for classes. I had to take the ACT test when I got down there, because they took different tests than the SAT.
Yeah.
So it was a very last minute hectic trip to go down there, and probably wasn't the best decision that I'd ever made, but it was the decision I made, and I stuck with it for a year.
For a year. Yeah, and in going to LSU, and eventually changing your mind when it comes to, like, what made you decide to go into business, I guess? What was the series of events?
As far as a backup to not playing golf, I felt like a business degree gave me lots of different options.
More options.
And actually, if I had not misregistered for classes at LSU, I may have gone into agronomy, which would have been the study of grasses and different things like that. Basically, it's the degree you would need to be a greenskeeper somewhere.
Okay.
I knew I didn't want to be a club pro, working in a pro shop, but I wouldn't mind working on the grounds,
Yeah, being a groundskeeper.
because you have to deal less with people and more with
Just
the
the
earth.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. But classes got mixed up, and so that's what.
Yeah, again, I had to register late, so I had to go to every department to register for my classes. And I thought I'd gotten everything done, lay down in bed that night, and right before I fall asleep, how everything's going through your head. I'm sort of going through my schedule, and it's like, I have 2 classes at the exact same time. So I had to drop one of them, and I ended up dropping the agronomy class. And then everywhere else that I went after that didn't have agronomy as a subject.
To sort of, I guess, end the more logistical side of your college experience, like you switching to Chapel Hill, how did that happen? Did you just...
Well, there was an in-between on that, which was I didn't have a good experience at LSU, and me and another freshman there sort of decided, if we can find another place to go next year, let each other know, and we'll go. Well, I worked the Duke golf camp as a college counselor, and worked with the golf coach at Odessa Junior College, and he and I hit it off really well. And you could transfer to a junior college back then and not have to lay out a year. I wasn't really interested in going to school for 5 years, so that was an option that I could go play there immediately and then transfer into a 4-year school. He was a really good coach. It was a good program. So sight unseen, decided I would go to Odessa Junior College and talk my other friend, Carl, into doing the same thing. So neither one of us had seen the school. He hadn't even met the coach.
Oh, wow.
And so we headed off to West Texas.
Wait, that's where Chapel Hill is?
That's where Odessa Junior College is. So my second year in college, I went to Odessa Junior College.
Oh, I didn't know that. So you went to West Texas for your second year of college, Odessa University, and then you went to Chapel Hill after that? And so didn't like the school you were at, said if we can find another college to go to after this year, tell each other. Went to Odessa because of the coach. And then what was the Chapel Hill switch about?
Well, I mean, junior college, you can only go 2 years, so I'd already gone 1. So
okay.
I had to go somewhere else after then.
For undergrad.
Yeah.
For bachelor.
It was what do you call it, an associate's degree.
Yeah, you got an associate's degree.
Then Chapel Hill actually ended up sort of being, I hurt my wrist right near the end of the season at Odessa, and was able to play through that for the most part. Had a decent summer, um, and ended up really just going to UNC as a walk-on. I still knew the coach there, and he felt bad about the transcript mix-up. One, he wasn't looking for my application to come through because he didn't need to.
Yeah.
So I was able to go there sort of as a preferred walk-on and was basically pretty much immediately on the team. I didn't play a whole lot, but
Yeah.
was able to go there and be on the team and finish up there.
There you go. And out of your 3 colleges, which was your favorite, do you think?
I would say North Carolina.
Chapel Hill?
Yeah,
Yeah.
was, which is unusual. I grew up a Duke fan, and but really got to where I really liked, just the whole atmosphere at North Carolina, and
Became the Tar Heels fan.
yeah, absolutely.
Is that in contrast with your family members?
My brother's still a Duke fan. My dad pulled for both. He actually went to North Carolina for one of his graduate degrees.
Okay.
But
So he wasn't part of the rivalry between the two. He just sort of liked them both.
yeah, I think he liked Duke probably more when we were growing up, but it was because we played at the Duke golf course.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, the golf coach at Duke, when I was growing up and when my dad was there, had been an offensive line coach for the Duke football team earlier in his career.
Oh, wow.
They needed a golf coach, and he basically said, well, golf can't be that hard. And
That's
so
funny.
he got that, and he was really good, a really good guy.
That's cool.
So we would go to a lot of the football games, kind of as his guest, because he had really nice seats and was a celebrity, might be too strong a word, but he was, well known and had coached for the guy. He had been an assistant coach for the guy who the stadium's named after, which is Wallace Wade. So he was definitely part of the Duke history.
Duke history. Wow.
So he was a pretty neat guy.
And you got to learn golf from him, even though he wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily knew a lot about golf at the time? Or?
He did. I mean, by the time I got to him, he did.
He did.
But he was very much a kind of a natural golf teacher. He wasn't, scientific in his methods or anything, but he kind of knew what worked. He had a great eye for just seeing this and would either have you move your grip just a little bit or change your stance just a little bit, and then you'd start hitting it good. He didn't really have like an overall teaching philosophy or a swing theory. He just could watch somebody and
tell them how to change it.
He just had a really good eye for being able to have you move this, or change this or that, and next thing you know, you're hitting it really good.
All right. Well, on the vein of college, we're almost through college. Much quicker than when you actually went, but I guess just generally speaking, any college stories of the wild or not so wild variety? Because you've always been a bit less social, I suppose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So probably nothing too crazy, but
or
even just regular old college stories. Even.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed having fun, especially in Odessa. At Odessa Junior College, our team was very social. We went out a lot to clubs and stuff, and I went through a period of probably drinking more than I should have.
Yeah.
And then quit that because it was interfering with what I was wanting to do, or I felt like it was, and when I stopped, I realized that yes, indeed, it was.
Yeah.
And so I just, cut back on that, but for a while I just completely cut it out. I just quit drinking at all, or going to clubs, or doing anything, and realized that I was feeling better and playing better, doing better in school, and so I kind of finished out the year kind of that way.
Kind of strong, yeah.
And other than that, just, had a good time at, most of my college memories was just, working hard to play on the golf team.
Yeah, because that was your focus, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you're really regimented. I'm sure other sports can be this way too, but every day you don't really have an off period for golf. So every day we were at the golf course at 1 o'clock
in the
afternoon. So all of my classes had to be in the morning.
Wow.
So I never had a semester that I didn't either have a 7:30 or an 8 o'clock class every day. So we had to be done with classes by noon, so you could eat and then get out to the golf course. Sounds like fun, but I mean that's, that was every semester was like that. But it also made me forced you to be organized and get better at time management and knowing.
I wonder. I think that's probably just a sports thing in general. Is if you're in a sport, you got to kind of regiment yourself a bit more.
Absolutely.
Man.
It's like a job. I mean, you're.
I do know the one sort of college story I remember you telling that you haven't brought up yet is it's a lot less of like a college story, more of a professor that gave people really hard time so that they'd leave. Which college was that?
Oh, at North Carolina.
North Carolina.
It was a senior level business class. It was where you studied business cases. You'd analyze business cases and sort of come up with what you would do or what you think they did. And first day of class, you go in, and I forget how many kids were in there, but probably 50 or so. Not a huge auditorium class, but a pretty full classroom.
Yeah.
And he goes, I know this is a senior level course. I just want to let y'all know that I completely grade on the curve, which means, and I won't get the percentages right, but 10% will make A's, 20% will make a B, 30% of you will make a C, and then 10% are going to make a D or worse. So basically, like everybody in the 30% of the class is either going to get a D or fail.
Yeah.
And that's about all he told us about class. And that was on, let's say, a Thursday or Friday. It was, and so for whatever reason, it didn't tick me off, but it kind of challenged me. It was sort of like, well, I'll show him. I can cut it. He's not going to scare me off. So I show back up to class the next Monday, and half the class is gone. So I mean, it's like we're down to 20 or so kids in there. And he gets up and he says, great. He said, forget everything I said last week. He said, I said that because the university makes this class be open to 50 students. And he goes, that's too many students for what we do.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He said, it's more, the way I teach it, it's more geared to a smaller class. He said, this is the perfect size. Don't worry about the grade stuff, I said.
Did that end up being a really good class?
Really good class. Yeah. Good professor, because a lot of it was kind of real world stuff. You'd go
felt practical.
Yeah. So it was a good class.
What was that your favorite class you think you ever took, or is there something else that has that title, or a class you remember the best, most fondly?
I like that one. Oddly enough, I liked my business law class, partly because the professor was kind of a challenging guy. You never knew when he was going to call on you. And we had a couple of football players in there, and one in particular, I want to say his last name was Curry, but I'm probably not remembering that right. But he was really bright, and this guy did not shy away from calling on the football player. But the football player was always
ready.
He knew his stuff. So to me, that was kind of fun being in there, seeing that. But it was also another kind of real world business law. And he was a business lawyer, which sort of made it, he wasn't just teaching something out of a book. He could tell you
it was his field of expertise.
Real things that, cases that he had done and all that. So that was interesting.
That's almost always true. Like in my learning psychology, the classes that were almost always the best were ones that the professor had interest in or knew about.
Yeah. And a lot of the classes at North Carolina in the business school were that way, was that they were professors, but almost all of them had done what they were teaching in the business world.
Yeah.
So they had real world expertise that they could shed more light on than what was just maybe written in a book. You know, some of them may have written the book, but you felt like you were getting stuff that you could really apply,
Yeah.
not just you're studying some theory, but going to get out there and it's not going to be like that.
It's people who are actually in the field,
Yes.
which is helpful. Well, I mean, that very summarized is college. I'm sure graduating was amazing because your dad was the first family member to graduate. Was your older brother the second then?
Yeah, he graduated from High Point College.
So you would have been the third, which is
yeah.
still a big deal.
I never
Second
really
generation.
I never thought about that, or
Yeah.
probably should have, but my parents never really kind of overemphasized that. I graduated in December. I did have to go an extra semester, so I don't even hardly remember. I didn't go to graduation.
Not much of a big ceremony then.
No,
Yeah,
I didn't even go. It's like I got my diploma and was
it was done.
off. Yeah.
So less grandiose, I suppose. I guess pushing forward with sort of I'm realizing somewhat long list of questions I have, but we'll take it as we go. What sort of I guess I have written down memorable events in history you were alive for.
Oh.
I know a few of them, but are there any that jump out to you?
Oh yeah,
Sort of
for
events?
sure. President Kennedy's assassination.
Yeah.
I remember walking home from school with a friend, and my mom was crying at the door and told my friend he should go home. And it was on TV. And we kind of heard, you know, I would have had to be first or second grade, maybe 1963.
Yeah.
So I would have been 7, I guess.
Living
so
in Durham.
Second
at the time.
grade, I
Yeah.
guess. You hear things, but they don't even kind of click. Remember hearing like some kids saying, somebody shot at the president or something. And you just, again, it didn't
Yeah.
really register. But then getting home and my mom's crying, sends a friend home, and then it's on the TV. So that was definitely a memorable.
Did they show like the actual getting shot on TV? Or?
They didn't actually have any of the footage like they probably would have now with all the camera phones. A film came out much later, but they've just had reports and eyewitness accounts.
Yeah.
The one thing we did see 2 days later was we saw live Lee Harvey Oswald get shot.
Yeah.
The guy that shot him, because they were broadcasting him, they were transferring him to another jail, and you were just sitting there watching TV, and it's like, he just get shot?
Yeah.
I mean, and that, I'm not sure that's ever happened since, of just a live TV broadcast of actually seeing somebody get shot.
Yeah. And before we leave that event, I'm sure we could do a whole nother podcast on the JFK assassination. Mm-hmm. But, oh man, wouldn't it be great if I could find like a history person whose expertise is on that period of history and get you there too.
Mm-hmm.
But the thought would be, you've done a lot of research on the JFK assassination and the conspiracies surrounding it. And great summary. What's sort of your takeaway on the JFK situation? Was it the what were the theories, like Catholic Church or Cuba, or I don't even know what the theories were really. The FBI, CIA.
For the longest time, I would say through late high school, through college, and probably even into my 20s and 30s, I really thought there was a conspiracy. That somehow or another, either the CIA and or Cuba and or the mafia might be involved. There were some odd things going on.
Yeah.
It sounds like an odd intertanglement, but those three groups there was some commingling of doing things together. But the more things I read later, and it just seemed, and also the longer you go on something like that, it's like, it, to have a conspiracy that would involve multiple groups like that, at some point somebody's going to say something.
Especially with how long it's been now.
Yeah, and
I mean,
nobody
you were in
said
first
anything.
grade when it happened. You'd feel like something would have spilled by now, like
Yeah.
someone on their deathbed or would have said.
Yeah, and I think some of the, without getting into the minutia, some of the timing issues with the shots can be, I think they used the Zapruder film as the first shot happened at some point on the film, and I think now it's probably more likely that the first shot was before you actually saw any of the film, so that sort of changes the timing.
Yeah.
That was the whole, but I think what caused the conspiracy theories to come out was the government was so afraid that there might have been a conspiracy that they didn't want it to be. They didn't want it to involve Russia, or that was probably the biggest fear because Oswald had been to Russia.
Yeah.
And with all the nuclear arms, and that was still a big fear.
Yeah.
You'd had the Cuban Missile Crisis that was really
It's almost
scary.
like they wanted to check to find out themselves. Because I almost feel like if it was Russia, they'd probably keep that secret just because to avoid.
Yeah, they didn't want to be forced into a situation that we have to go to war. I think they probably wanted to know, but it was like they didn't want anybody to know.
Yeah.
So I think just the way the things were written, it's like, okay, it doesn't look like they were really wanting to dig deep into this.
Do you think they ever did, or do you think they just
yes.
sort of left well enough alone?
And even later, there was a House Select Committee on assassinations, and their conclusion was that there were more than one shooter. But some of the evidence that they used has now, I think, since come back, and it's like, I think they kind of misinterpreted some of the acoustic. One, they were taking a pretty giant leap that this tape we found that's very vague acoustics, that you hear some things. It's like it wasn't from the police motorcycle they thought it was. It was from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they just misinterpreted stuff. But
I think from what you've told me, if it was a conspiracy, it would have to have been not a widespread one. It would have to have been a very close-knit situation.
And if there was a conspiracy, part of it would lean on Jack Ruby was a part of it. And the more you learn about Jack Ruby, it's like he might be one of the last people that you'd ever.
Jack Ruby was the one who shot Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah,
right?
It's like he wasn't a real stable
human being.
Yeah, I mean, and it was also, again, not to get into the minutia, but I think it was just an odd coincidence that he ended up being down there. He knew the police, so he could kind of go wherever he wanted to. He had just gone to the Western Union station to wire some money to somebody. His dog, which he loved to death apparently, was in his car. Mm-hmm. And he walked, saw some cars over by the station, walked over there, walked down the ramp at the exact time that he was coming down. All that conspiracy people would just, it's like, that's too good to be, you can't.
Where he bumped into Lee Harvey Oswald or saw him.
And he's there, and I think it was just a spur of the moment.
Probably like a lot of Americans would today, of just like, you killed our president.
Yeah. And so, but it's sort of like if he was planning on doing that, he wouldn't have had his dog with him. Yeah, he wouldn't have done the wire that close to when he was leaving, because he was supposed to leave at a different time. Mm-hmm. I think even before then, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's like, so then you're saying, well, if the police knew, then you're saying, okay, now there's another person involved.
Was the guy who shot Lee Harvey Oswald killed in that incident too, or was he then taken under arrest?
He got convicted and died in prison of cancer.
That's right.
And I think he even said at some point somebody gave him cancer, that they injected him with it. So I mean,
not a stable person, probably.
No, so.
Yeah. Well, okay, so there's that historical event, and we talked a little bit about it. What other historical events do you jump to mind when you think that you've lived through?
All of the astronaut stuff, the moon, and leading up to us landing on the moon. That was huge, and the landing on the moon and bringing them back. That was probably one of the biggest biggest stories before that. But that sort of went all through the 60s.
Yeah.
The whole moon program, and I was always fascinated with that, the space program. And but you also had the 60s were very turbulent with the Vietnam War, and I remember 1968, Martin Luther King getting assassinated. I remember, where I heard about that, and it's like, oh my gosh. And then Robert Kennedy got killed that same year. He had just won the California primary and got shot in a hotel after his victory speech. And so, I mean, those were very memorable news things of growing up. And
now, was that how old were you during the Vietnam War stuff?
Through junior high.
Okay, so not quite old enough to be participating in the protest, or do you think if you were old enough to, you would have participated in any local protest against it?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's easy to say. I think it was a hard decision.
It is also easier to go to protest. It's harder to be part of organizing a protest. But showing up for a protest is honestly a bit easier to do.
Mm-hmm. And I think I've told you the story when we were, I think it was ninth grade, our ninth grade field trip. We were in Washington, D.C. during one of the May Day protests, and saw lots of hippies just camping out in that mall area.
Yeah.
So that whole hilly area around the Washington Monument was just people sleeping or just laying on the ground. Saw people skinny dipping in the reflecting pool.
Yeah.
And saw, just saw all of that. So that was an odd time to be in Washington, D.C.
Sure.
For a field trip.
Now I have a bit more broader questions that are less specific, but Hobbs is wanting outside, so I'm going out, but while I get distant and weird sounding, Hobbs, were you just doing that to get attention?
Probably.
No. Friends. You grew up with friends. This is a very broad topic, but like, sort of, what were your thoughts? What are your thoughts on friendships in general? How did you keep in touch, or did you, or how do you go about making new friends? Like, what's that look like for you?
That's lots of questions there. The friends I had, growing up, actually, like when we were in school, about the only way to stay in touch was either long-distance phone calls, which were really expensive, or send a letter.
Yeah.
Didn't write a whole lot of letters, but I remember, a friend or two, we'd send a letter or two during the school year, but not a bunch. But, it sort of made getting together when you were home for Thanksgiving or Christmas, even that much more fun, because you hadn't talked to each other a whole lot, so there was a whole lot of catching up. It's like the old "what have you been doing?" There was lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about, yeah.
And since then, just you stay in touch a little bit through email, or a little bit through Facebook, but I don't know if you stay in touch with people other than just if they post something, you see that. But try and call a couple of people. New friends, seem like most of the friends that made growing up either met at church or through work. Probably more through church. You just meet people from that and just, probably make friends easier now than I did when I was younger. But I was really not picky, but I had never had a desire to want to have a lot of friends, but I liked having a few close friends. Yeah.
I remember you've talked about that. Like, you were more of a few close friends kind of guy. That's just my water bottle, but it's non-spill. So I guess I asked that as sort of a general, like, that sort of thing. What's sort of your criteria for a friend? I know you have a probably higher criteria than some because you like the closer group. But is it just because there's acquaintance and then there's friend.
Right.
Those are different.
I think, similar values, I'm not, I guess, and with that, I don't like rude people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's more of filtering out stuff that I don't like than looking for specific
Specific things
check
to do.
boxes.
Yeah.
But rude people I don't like. Selfish people I don't usually gravitate towards. I like interesting people. I, I like listening to people. I like talking too, but um, but I also like people that they're talking they've thought about.
Yeah.
If they have opinions, and this is probably more important now than years ago, but that they're well thought out opinions, not just regurgitating something that
Something they saw on Fox News. Or,
yeah. So I like people that are willing to also listen to, and usually people like that are willing to listen to
Yeah.
other opinions if your opinions are based similarly on that
Something thought out.
yeah, not just again you're not just regurgitating something you
Something
saw
you
or
heard,
read,
yeah.
but it's through little more sophistication.
All right.
So I mean, those sound like simple things, but it does seem to weed out
Yeah.
quite a few people.
There you go. I mean, I think I agree with that. I think interesting people is a big one for me too. Like to be, interesting.
And I kind of like people. When I said work, then I have to think about that a little bit. I like the people that I worked with, but I can't think of too many that we really hung out with socially. And part of that is if you do something all day, I don't necessarily want to talk about it after work. So I like the friends we have now. Have a friend that works at a packaging place, or they make containers and stuff like that. Chris, they're at Compact, and that's sort of what they do.
That's what they do, yeah.
And Steve's a judge, and just another guy that is with them is a doctor. So I mean, I like hearing people's different life experiences of what they're doing at work, and also if they did happen to ask what was going at my work, it wouldn't be completely boring to people. Although in settings like that when I was working, I'd much rather hear what they were doing than talk about what
you were doing. Yeah, for sure. To kind of, I guess, get into these next two questions are a bit sadder or deeper, maybe. But like my question to you would be, what was your, I guess, first loss like of maybe someone close to you, and how did you? These are just questions that a child may ask their parent at some point.
Yeah,
maybe we'll listen back to this. What was your first loss like, and how did you deal with it too?
Yeah,
if you remember.
The first, big loss would have been my mom when she passed away from cancer, and that was really, really hard. She had actually first got breast cancer before I was born, which means she beat it in the 50s, which was not happening all that often. So she beat the odds then.
Tough.
And then had me. But she got cancer again in her late 60s and battled it for about a year when it came back and got her. But we knew she was sick, and I'll always, be thankful. My brother, because I was living in Texas at the time, I think, and she was sick, and he called me, and he said, "I think you need to get here."
Yeah.
So I immediately got a plane ticket and flew home, and got to the hospital, talked to her. She was kind of in and out, but she was still alive, and I talked to her. But she passed away the next day, around midday. So I got there in time to see her, and I'm glad that because that's a tough decision to tell somebody.
Yeah.
Because he lived in North Carolina, so he was there, and he definitely made the right call of saying.
And neither me or Mason were alive at the time, or
no. no. Um, yeah, I forget how old I would have been at that time, but no, neither one of y'all were born yet.
Yeah. And in dealing with that, did you deal with it mostly through talking? Did you make a point to reminisce much? Like, how did you sort of deal with that grief immediately and through the years?
Gosh, it's been so long. I don't remember as much about that. I mean, I know we sat around as family and talked, and I think a bigger, it's a little different in that I also think that as a family, we kind of rallied, and I remember being really concerned about my dad,
Yeah.
as to make sure he was okay. So I actually stayed in Durham for a pretty good while after that and just hung out with my dad and, finally got to where, he said, I think I'm okay,
Mm.
But talking to friends, I know one of the things that really touched me was, again, I wasn't living there, but, two or three of my friends showed up. Two in particular, I remember Henry and Philip showed up at our house and just, they didn't have to say anything. As soon as they walked in the door, just started crying and we hugged each other and just, there's something therapeutic about just having friends that are there.
Yeah.
Or, anybody that cares about you that's there. And so talking about it, I didn't talk through anything, but just that
Yeah.
having them there.
And that's what you
helped.
were for Granddad too, for Grandpa.
Yeah,
Somebody
just there. We didn't have any deep philosophical discussions as far
about it,
as
yeah.
life and death. It was just being there.
And those things I think are hardly, the discussions about life, death are hardly as helpful as what you were talking about there.
Yeah.
Having people.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it can be helpful to get an outside perspective in terms of talking to people. Because when you're in the midst of it, it's sort of hard to, it's not even be rational.
Right.
There's no need to be rational about something. But to have a perspective of it's natural. It's something that happens
Yeah.
To everybody at some point.
Yeah.
And to have that outside perspective of the world is in fact not ending. It just really stinks right now, kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah, and it's sort of, it is definitely a process. That first week or so is it's just kind of a blur. And I definitely think during that time period, it's just people being there is all you need. Nobody can.
I don't know if this is a too personal a thing, but do you remember much of what your last few conversations with her were like?
I mean, I just remember when I got to the hospital of just telling her, she was a great mom and just thanks for being a great mom.
Yeah.
And I think I think she had gotten some tests. We used to go to Pinehurst. I think
Yeah.
you've heard us talk about that for the father-son golf tournament. My brother would take his sons, and then I'd come and play with Dad. And so it was like a family gathering down there. And she had some tests, but didn't want the results until after Pinehurst. But you could kind of tell she thought that might be her last one. And so just I don't remember discussions, but I just, remember that being a special time for us to be together.
For sure. And I think it's big that you were spending your last conversations with her. Telling her how great of a mom she was, because that feels very selfless to me. Because I feel like a lot of people in that situation be like, do you have any last words for me?
Yeah.
But that is more reassuring them that their life was full.
Mm-hmm.
Not that maybe she needed that, but
Yeah.
it's a full life. It's a full life. But to hear somebody say that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So as to avoid teary eyes, move on to the next one. But the more I hear about Grandma, she seems amazing.
She was. I mean, she didn't have a college degree, but she started working with underprivileged kids. I remember she worked with they weren't really mentally retarded. What she found out was most of them were more socially retarded.
Okay.
You know, if and that's probably not even a word that you would use today, but
Yeah, and it's not a big deal because you are using it in what the medical terminology would have been at the time. But yeah, we don't really use the term retarded anymore these days. Just because of it has more of a negative connotation now.
Yeah.
There are other names for those conditions, but that is what they would have been called at the time.
yeah,
So,
but trust me,
yeah,
she would have defended them to her death.
yeah,
But I mean, these were kids that were growing up in just terrible situations, and
Yeah.
she just loved on them and progressed on that, and I think she ended up taking college courses and got to where she could, help more and more kids out with that. So she was a very compassionate, strong, and brave lady.
yeah. It sounds like it. The next somewhat serious question, though, I think it'll be less at home because it's more of a broader thing, is growing up. And I think in life, people have moments in varying degrees of self-loathing or anxiety or regret, which are big emotions and can be stressful. And I certainly have a bit of the anxiety portion in terms of having graduated and getting ready to do this road trip stuff. How have you dealt with those sort of things in your life? Was it family? Was it faith? Like, what were the things that have gotten you through those emotions, those things?
Yeah, I think
Or philosophies? That
probably a little bit of both. Faith and just continuing to believe that things can get better, or that
that's a big one.
that you're not stuck, and also realizing, and maybe some of my chaotic college career, as much of a fiasco as it seems like, may have taught me, was that, you know what, if you find yourself in a mistake, or you're not stuck wherever you go. But also, I wasn't the type to just give up and run. I didn't do that in any of those situations. But I realized that you can change course. I do remember a lot of anxiety when I first graduated. Having a really hard time finding a job in North Carolina at that particular point.
Yeah.
And finally found a job in West Texas in sales, which wasn't the top thing I wanted to do, but it was a job and it paid really well. So it's like, okay, it gets me started. So, and I guess not being afraid to move or live someplace different, you just kind of jumped in and saw what you could do. So,
yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And there's some of the bigger things. The thing you said about you're never stuck, really, and that things can get better. I think those are things I've consistently heard when I've asked any variant of that question of anyone I've talked to, really. Mm-hmm. I think those are fundamental things. People have worded it differently. I like to word sort of a word that Cody had used before of blessings can come from tragedy, right? Good things can come about. And the wonderful phrase, there is more for you, which is a general idea of like, there is going to be more good stuff for you, but also more bad, like more loss will happen. But the bottom line is you're not stuck in this moment. There's going to be more. Or there's the classic story with the phrase, this too will pass, that kind of thing. Yeah. But that's all in there. And I think you put it well too, though, just the stuck, because that's what the feeling is, of being stuck. And you've definitely had moments of anxiety with the family too. I feel with jobs falling out from under you, and all the times we've moved. So that sort of idea. And I know faith has been a big thing, and I kind of wanted to touch on that a bit more. Was it faith in the sense of the idea that God has a plan, or was it faith in the sense of well, I guess. So with anxiety, what was it leaning on the idea that God has a plan, or was it leaning on the idea that? Because I feel like when we lean on God has a plan, we are assuming it's a plan that leads to good,
Yeah.
when sometimes maybe it's not.
Yeah, I think
But
some of it, and I'll kind of go back, sort of a big life changing or arc in our life story. It would probably be the same for me and your mom, was when Mason had his surgeries when he was born.
yeah,
The first one didn't take, so he had a leak in his tracheal and esophagus. So,
mm,
and they told us it's like, this one's serious. This, we
yeah,
need to get. We're going back in. We've got to get this to not leak, or it could be fatal. So it was a real dark time, and just of prayer, and and that's kind of where I'm getting to on the faith, was through just a long journey of that, was that one, God loved that little baby more than I did, um, and that I'm learning that I can love something a lot more than I thought I could.
could, yeah,
And so what the peace that came over me was not that he was going to be okay. And I think some people say, okay, God's not going to let this little baby die.
yeah,
Well,
happen.
little babies do die. But it was a peace that came over me that it was going to be okay either way,
in the long run.
that I would have the strength either way, that it would be fine. And that, so, and some of that, helped carry us through some of the other stuff. Is not so much that, oh, everything's going to turn out great and there's a pot of gold at the end of
At
this,
the end of the road,
this rainbow that God has planned for you. It's just that, you know what, it's not always going to be easy, but you're not going to go through it alone.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. When you're at your weakest, I can be strong for you.
For sure.
So that type of faith, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. Yeah, it does. And I think a lot of that has to do with the power that faith has in helping one have strength in rough times. Because sometimes we feel we don't have the strength for it.
Right.
So to have the opportunity to surrender, which I think in spirituality broadly is such a big thing, is surrendering and saying, you know what, I can't do anything about this, but there is a strength in you or deep within myself, like the spiritual sort of oomph, that will get me through this.
Yeah.
Even if I don't have the actual control over the situation, which I think is big. And I was kind of curious if that was sort of the idea. And you brought up Mason, which I'm sure will come up again. And we are through, at least I think for now, the hard-pressed, serious questions. Because now we're going to get into fun stuff, or more fun stuff. What were the people you dated like before mom? Like the relationships you had before mom? The good, the bad. What kind of were they like? Did you have many?
I had a couple. One was kind of a feisty, fiery
Sort of
person.
Yeah.
Another one was very materialistic.
Did you buy that one a lot of gifts in? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? Or?
So mom's much less, not as much high maintenance.
Yeah.
As some of those. So, but very few, very few relationships really.
Now, did they end for the reasons you kind of stated? One was a bit maybe much in terms of personality, and the other was very high maintenance in terms of desire. Like there's like the love languages thing, and some people are gift receivers. They want to receive gifts. And that was probably a bit hard on your wallet. And
yeah, especially at that time. So yeah, I mean those were all contributing factors there.
Oh, for sure. And making your way to eventually meeting mom, like how to you do you know when a relationship is good and healthy, and also vice versa? Like what were the signs to you that, I guess for mom, that was a good thing, and with the others, these are bad signs. These are red flags. What sort of was the distinction?
I don't No, I wish I could say, you know, there's a crystal ball that you've got that you
Yeah.
know what's good and what's bad. I think I'm not sure you can control who you fall in love with, you know, who you're attracted to. So I
Yeah.
think that initial love, attractiveness, you know, whatever you call
Call
it,
it, yeah.
attraction is chemical in nature, and some, I'm not sure, you know, there's not a lot of logic that goes behind it.
Oh yeah, no.
But then just trying to see, you know, she was not, you know, the pluses of once you get kind of past that, or even when you're in the middle of that, is, you know, she wasn't argumentative about stuff. She was, you know, we were kind of similar in being easygoing. She was more social than me, which is probably a good thing.
Helps, yeah.
To helps me meet people. You know, the friends we have now are probably,
Mostly
you know,
her
because,
doing kind of thing.
you know, she helped
Yeah.
us become a part of those groups or whatever. And she was, you know, when you say low maintenance, not just, you know, some people say that and it's mean that you don't have to give them a lot of attention, but it was more, you know,
Yeah.
she wasn't very materialistic.
Yeah.
You know, which,
That would be a
you know,
better way
thank
of putting
goodness,
it, probably.
because, you know, we've had so many ups and downs. I mean,
Economically, yeah.
of, you know, getting laid off or having jobs come and go. You know, we've lived in nice houses, and then we've had to live in an apartment.
Yeah.
You know, and we had times where, you know, we didn't have to worry about what we were buying, and other times that we had to be really, you know, tight with our budget. And she's fine through all of that. She enjoys the nice things like the vacation we just had, but then she's equally as fine if we're, you know, living in a small 2-bedroom apartment and
Yeah.
cooking mac and cheese and,
Yeah.
you know, something else, you know, so that is all good.
It's all very good.
We did have a common faith, but I don't think either one of our faith was we both kind of grew in our faith together, which was kind of neat that
Yeah.
happened. So
Sort of became more spiritual and religious together, and going to church together and all that kind of thing.
yeah, and I mean, you probably wouldn't even believe this, you know, because as much as Mom's been involved in youth since you were a baby at church, when we first got married, our vision of church was we would go to the church service, go in and get out, and, you know, the fewer people that we talked to,
The better.
the better. It's like we just wanted to go in there for that 1 hour, and then we were gone.
But now you guys got so involved in
You know,
church as you got older, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean but we were lucky that we sort of grew along with that. She was involved with the youth when you guys were real little, and I wasn't. But, you know, we both got, you know, we'd go to Sunday school class and stuff like that. But
Real, maybe not real quick, but, and I know the answer to this, but this is for the sake of the record. How did you meet Mom?
I met her. I worked for Southwestern Bell Mobile Systems, and we had a pretty big group there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and occasionally, pretty young group, and occasionally we'd go out and do things socially. And this particular week, we went to a bowling alley.
Yeah.
And apparently Mom was friends with one of the girls that worked there, and she invited her, so I met your mom at a bowling alley.
Yeah. Was it a good game that day? Were you playing well that day, or do you remember?
I don't remember. I've always bowled okay, you know.
The real question is, did you bowl better than her? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay. I'll ask her later, and maybe she
Okay.
knows. But yeah, met her at a bowling alley.
She did have her own bowling shoes, so if she bowled better than me, it
Would not be a surprise. Yeah. This kind of goes back to an earlier question, but was there a moment when you, well, I guess there would have had to have been, maybe not one moment, but sort of a thing where you realized, oh yeah, this is the woman I want to marry? Like, when did the first thought come in your mind of, oh, I should buy a ring, or I want to buy a ring?
Yeah, I mean, it was not immediately.
Yeah.
But she was 30 and I was 30, probably tell you better than me. We're 3 or 5 years difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we hit it off, and at that age, you kind of felt like you had an idea. It's like, okay, this is a good good deal here. So,
Yeah.
but I don't remember a specific moment or this
Yeah.
just sort of I guess it's natural as you're dating somebody, or the more you get involved in, of just I wonder if she
Mhm.
could be the one, or do I marry her or not? And
So definitely a more natural progress of events,
Yeah.
sort of thing. What did your parents think of mom and you marrying mom specifically?
Well, my dad loved her quite a bit. I mean,
Mhm.
liked her a lot, and Grandma Phyllis, liked her. So I mean,
Yeah.
they approved pretty quickly.
And so your mom had passed away before
She had
you
passed
married.
away. Yeah, she would have liked your
She would
mom
like your
quite a
mom too.
bit, though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I know we've talked about this before. You probably remember the wedding less than mom does, but any sort of memories jump to mind about the wedding itself, or?
Just you're really nervous. Uh, you want everything to go well.
Yeah.
The wedding itself. I remember being nervous, and somehow or another they had raw vegetables back there, and I think I ate either like a piece of broccoli or something. And as soon as I ate it, it's like, oh man, I hope this wasn't a mistake.
Yeah.
That my stomach's gonna not get happy, but I managed to go through that okay. But just being, you're excited but nervous that it's like I hope everything goes the way
Goes well.
she'd like it to go.
And then wait. Well, yeah. What after getting married, what sort of changed between you and mom, if anything? Do you feel like the relationship was just stronger? Was that when did faith immediately become a bigger part of it into the picture? Like, what do you think changed?
No, I don't. I don't think there was a big change. I just think we were already committed to each other before we got married. I just think we were fortunate enough that we just kept kind of growing together as we went along. But it wasn't like you woke up the next day or the next week and went, "Wow, this
It's different.
this is a lot different now."
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was but like I say, I think we were older and we were committed to each other already, so it wasn't like it was a major change.
Follow up now. A very quick snippet about Mason's birth and mom being pregnant with Mason. There are people tell stories all the time of, oh, you don't know what it's like to be a parent until you hold a kid in your arms or you have a kid. What sort of was your experience with the firstborn, with my older brother Mason? Like what?
Like when he was born?
Yeah, and I guess leading up to it a bit too. But.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of almost overwhelming, when you realize, okay, you're going to be a parent, and there's not really an instruction book for it. There are plenty of books written on it, but
yeah.
You just know you want to be a good dad and continue to be a good husband, and just but it is
Yeah.
a little overwhelming, but your faith does kind of kick in. It's like help me be a good dad. We're doing a podcast.
We're doing a podcast, by the way.
Huh?
We're doing a podcast.
I had a podcast?
Oh, we're doing a podcast. No, you're fine. This is not a professional endeavor.
Oh wow, it's 6.
Yeah, it's 6. Yeah, I was gonna say.
I told you 6.
We'll go change clothes then. I don't know how much longer we'll do this then, but sorry, continue about that process, I guess.
And with him, they had to almost immediately. They knew something was wrong with him when he was born, because he couldn't swallow. I guess when they tried to clear out his mouth or whatever, they couldn't get past a certain thing. So they knew something was wrong. So they whisked him off to another hospital there in town. So we just went from being ecstatic to being in panic. So probably a very different experience maybe than a lot of first parents. So it was just you kind of go into panic mode, but also
And you were in the room when Mason was being born with mom.
Yes.
I take it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Was a lot of sort of hand holding and that
yes.
sort of thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
And we've talked a bit about Mason's issues and the faith and
Yeah.
getting through that. And raising Mason. I forget, did you accidentally break his arm before I was born or after?
Would have been after we were in Texas,
Yeah.
and I was involved. It wasn't like I physically broke his
yeah.
arm, but
He was next to you. Yeah, go ahead.
he was on the bicycle, and we were sort of debating training wheels or not training wheels, and we were doing something with him and was trying to get him to go. He got on it and fell off,
Fell off
so
on
it
one
was
side,
you
yeah.
know, and landed on his arm really bad. So it was a bad break and elbow dislocated. So it was definitely
A bad time.
trip to the emergency room on that.
Yeah. Now we get sort of to me, because I am indeed the one interviewing here. The first question I have here is, was I an accident? Confirm or deny now? I'm sure I've asked this before, but
No.
no, so I was planned. Generally speaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying. I'm not sure. We weren't trying to not have a baby.
Yeah.
So yes, I would say that would
I
be
would say
planned.
not an accident.
Yeah.
Not a oh dear.
Right.
So compared to Mason's birth, which did turn into a panic, no fault of his own, obviously. But what was my birth like? Like what?
Quite a bit different in that Mason, because of, we didn't know it at the time, but because of his issues, he came early, earlier than we expected.
Yeah.
You didn't come on your due date, and to the point that they scheduled a time for us to come in and they induced labor. So yours was scheduled.
Yeah.
And went flawlessly. So that was quite different, and was glad it wasn't the
for sure.
panic situation.
And then for you, how did it feel to hold me for the first time? I was the second.
Yeah, equally as awesome. I mean, I'm not sure. We've never had more than two, but it's just equally as awesome an experience to hold somebody that you know is a part of you and a part of your partner, and just the miracle of a human being knit in one person that's a part of both of you.
We now have a live studio audience of two, Hobbs and Mom. So equally sort of as amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
And is it true what they say? Like as a dad, and I'll get to Mom later this evening of interviewing her, but like that having a kid does sort of change how you, because people say you don't understand until you're a parent or this or that. Do you buy into that kind of thing personally?
Yes.
That there are some things you don't understand until you are a parent?
Yeah. And I'm not even sure you can completely put in words, but all of a sudden somebody is more, it's a little bit like that when you get married, but even more so with your kids, that here's somebody that's more important than you, and that, it's just a different kind of love than you have for your wife or your husband. Your kids are, it's an amazing love and a feel of responsibility, and that you just want to take care of, take care of them, and want everything to be right, and so yeah, it's
Definitely changes
it
things
does
a little bit.
does change you.
I like how you put it. Now there's someone that matters more than you, kind of thing. That's pretty good. Now people say first impressions are a big deal, and I think they are true. So what were your first impressions of me in the first few years of my life? What sort of impression did I give off? Was I going to be a good employee? I think like first impressions. Like what were the first impressions? Dad's got. I'll talk to Mom about it.
That
later.
you were.
Just getting a sneak peek.
Forget the term that they would put, but you were a challenging child, energetic, strong-willed. Is that what you would say? Mason, and I don't know if it was because of his surgeries or just, the kind of child he was going to be, but he was sort of, even as a baby, was a little low-key, kind of, but you were spirited. But in a good, I don't think in a way that Mom and I were sitting here going, oh my gosh, what have we got? What's going on here? But definitely, a strong-willed little boy.
All right. So that was the first impression. I think that's held true just a little bit. I have been known to be a troubled child, I think.
Well, a good story on that
strong-willed at the very least.
Is Mason's the one, and knock on wood, that's been to emergency rooms and stuff, but we would have sworn that it would be you.
Yeah.
Because when you were a crawling baby and we were visiting Grandan, we weren't out of the room a minute. And you had literally crawled on a stool, which allowed you to crawl into a chair, which allowed you to crawl on the arm of that chair and then get on top of a TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were like, you weren't even walking then. It's like, how did he get from there to there? And we were like, oh my gosh, got our hands full here.
Well, I'm glad. And when I say, I'm a bit adventurous even to this day. And that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, what sort of struggles did you have as a parent, do you feel? What were the parenting struggles? Was it patience? Was it the logistics side of it, like dirty diapers and stuff like that? What were the parenting struggles like for you personally?
For me personally, I think it was more, not so much a struggle with either one of y'all or the changing diapers, but I think the challenge was you're living life at the same time that you're raising your kids. Yeah. And sometimes life can slap you around a little bit, job layoffs, this or that, and that to not let that get in the way of trying to be a good parent.
Of your relationship with your kids.
That, life can make you angry or make you sad, but to not bring that home or have that bleed over to the kids. And you're not always perfect at that.
Yeah, hardly could, but that makes sense. That would be, I think, hard, especially if you're working a lot and not always the best. The next one, which I think is a fun question, this is specifically from Dad's memory. I'm sure Mom will remember different things, but did I ever ask hard questions or embarrassing questions of you? And feel free to share. Whatever you're comfortable sharing, I guess. But because I was a baby, I'm not going to be embarrassed for myself for something I said when I was 3.
I don't remember. You probably, Mom will.
We'll talk to
I
Mom.
think there's a story. I think you asked something at church.
Part of the fun of it is that this is your memory, and then Mom's
during. They would have children's church or children's time that you'd go up there, and I think the pastor asked something, and you either asked something or said something that. But I don't remember.
Don't remember exactly what it was.
I'm sure she will.
Okay, I'll
especially
ask her later.
Based on.
Oh, maybe not. But I like that. I like the idea that I said something. Now, was it an embarrassing thing I said, or a really hard question that I said? Do you kind of remember the general feeling?
I don't remember that. I do remember, and maybe you never actually said anything, but I remember us always being nervous when you were up there. It's like, because Matt might say anything. Or his answer to that question
to this day, that is the case.
Might be anything.
Yeah. To this day, that's the case.
And
you can never be sure.
Little did we know that we'd be more pleased with the stuff that came out of your mouth than not.
Well, that's good. So that answers that.
But we knew you would say something.
Yeah, which is good because I remember there was a period of time, and I'll honestly probably talk to Mom more about that than. Because there was a period of time where I didn't talk much. Right. And you definitely worried about that.
But then once you started talking, you would.
Did you, obviously we believe in professionals, but the professionals at the time obviously were not correct. Were you skeptical of the people you went to first saying that something was wrong with me, or did you just sort of believe it?
I think we believed it. looking back, I'm not sure if they misdiagnosed, or I think it's very difficult to diagnose a kid that is that young.
Or prayer, or yeah.
You know, but we prayed about it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady that you had at your preschool, I guess it would have been, was so good, and helped you along. And we just remember being really ecstatic at the end of that period, and they'd done some more testing, and they were almost apologetic, but it's like, he's average. And we were like ecstatic, because we went from thinking that, you know, you would really have difficulties learning.
Yeah.
And like, obviously since then you just took off with it, but it's like, hey, we'll take that. That's fine.
And I guess that kind of goes into the next question I realized that I had. Other than that, what moments in my life did you worry about me the most? Like, were there moments that you worried about me the most? And that could be in recent time. It could be me now getting ready to go on this trip, or anything like that.
I remember obviously climbing up the TV as a little toddler.
Yeah, of course.
Then you took a really bad spill down a hill again on a bicycle. So
that was in Mississippi, wasn't
yes.
it? I remember that.
You were flying down a hill.
I wore Crocs. It was on my 10th birthday, I think, because I was like, oh, I'm double digits. I can take this hill.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Or was it 9th?
You'd had to be younger, because we left there when you were in,
The producer is informing me that, so 9.
7.
7?
7 or 8.
So I was,
Whatever.
I was definitely going, okay, here's another one of my
sons
sons that
has now
is
been
gonna
injured by a bike.
You know, is not going to like bicycles. I mean, we were, you know, and I'm sure Mom will talk about this, we worried when you shared with us that you weren't sure about your faith anymore.
Yeah.
But hopefully we handled that fine. And I mean, that's a personal decision for everybody, and that people make it and have questions at the same age. You know, that was a very natural age. But that shook us for a little bit, you know, that because it was such an important thing to us, and we felt like, you know, for you guys as well. So we, you know, worry is probably, you know, we worried about you. Certainly didn't love you any less, and but that made us worry. You always worry when your kids go off to school, to college, you know, because we went to college, and but I don't think, you know, worry, you know, to where you're losing sleep on the college stuff.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I got a little distracted here by a message. All right. Next up, I guess the next question is, growing up, did you have any sort of hopes for me growing up? Like just in the growing up process, not necessarily now, but like that I'd make friends, that I'd this or that. What sort of were your hopes?
Yeah, I
for
mean,
me?
you know, when we'd move or stuff, you always, you know, prayed and hoped that you guys would have good friends.
Yeah.
But I think more than anything, we just hoped that you would find your passion, I guess would be the best way to put, you know, find something that makes you happy. And happy may not even be the right word, but just find something that you feel passionate about, you know, that you would want to go do. We didn't have any preconceived ideas. It's like, okay, we want this one to be a lawyer or this one to be a doctor. It's like, we just want you to find your passion and just, you know.
Follow that. Yeah. The doors that open easiest, the doors you want to open. Yeah. That makes sense. And then I feel like, well, this one is the logical next one. What are your hopes for me now? What do you hope for my life moving forward from here? Similar idea?
Same thing, that you find something that you can be passionate about, and that, I mean, I know through my life's journey, I feel like so much of life is finding ways that you can help people.
Yeah.
Or help. I hope you find your opportunities to help.
There you go. Yeah, that makes sense too. And that is recorded for all time, so it'll yeah. Next one, I'm actually going to skip down to because I have questions that are for both you and Mom, and some questions that are.
You want me to go?
No, you're good. I have some questions that are for both you and Mom, and I have some questions that are individually. But I have one question, which is just one thing that's just green eggs and ham. You read me that a lot growing up. Green eggs and ham,
Did
Dr.
we?
Seuss.
Okay.
I remember you reading that to me all the time.
Okay.
I did most of the reading,
But I remember specifically Dad reading Green Eggs and Ham. All the time.
Okay.
I know Mom mostly read to me. Mom mostly, and I'll talk to her about that later, Harry Potter, stuff like that. But, so you clearly don't remember that very well.
Mm-mm.
Okay, I was going to ask if you could read it from memory.
No.
No way.
I remember, what was it, Brown Bear or Brown Bear, what did you see, or something.
Yeah.
I
That's
thought,
our amazing thing that we read that to him.
yeah, but no, I don't really, I couldn't.
But you read that to me a lot, I remember
Okay.
that. Next question is sort of a sillier vein. You have a really good sense of humor, in my opinion, as a person of comedy. Did you always have that, or do you feel like you developed that over time?
No, I think I always did. In that, in a lot of ways, we moved some when I was growing up, and I think that was sort of my way of making friends, or just, my way of coping with things was,
Yeah.
finding the humor in things, or trying to be funny,
Yeah, that's always the key. Is
which got
trying
me
to
sat
be
next to the teacher in fourth grade,
funny.
probably.
Yeah, that's exactly probably what it was. Yeah. I guess it kind of goes back all the way to the historical events thing. But one thing I'm really impressed with you about is your political change that you underwent.
Mm-hmm.
You went from voting Republican pretty much all the time to now being, honestly, for your age, in terms of people I personally know, probably no, that's not true, because our college professor is probably more left-leaning than you that I know, but like, for your age bracket, you are pretty left-leaning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty staunch change. What brought that about, I guess? What brought about your political change?
I mean, my voting party changed. I'm not sure I changed all that much. I mean, I did grow up during the Vietnam War, so there's a little bit of that
Yeah.
borderline pacifist in me, or certainly not being a big fan of war. I voted, my first presidential candidate I voted for was independent. John Anderson, I believe, and then I voted Republican for a while. And the main reason that I switched off of that, or got completely turned off, was when the younger Bush invaded Iraq.
Yeah.
That was sort of the last straw, and when it was for reasons that came out later that weren't true, they sort of lost me there.
Completely. Yeah, which is very justifiable and a good way to kind of realize what the situation was, I guess. Next, we're almost actually through the questions, to be honest, but this is a very broad question. How do you feel broadly? It's probably a hard question to answer. That me and Mason changed your life, or if we did. I mean, you already said we kind of did, but how do you feel we may have changed your life? Other than, of course, the 20 plus years spent raising a kid. Although that might be it. But.
I just think realizing, how large your capacity to love is, and to care for somebody, and that it is a good thing to have people in your life that you care about more than yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Here you go. Now, this is a bit of a less deep question. What's the favorite thing, or what's something that me and Mason introduced you to that you really like? Something that we introduced you to that you've really taken a liking to, or?
Actually, a lot of things. I like when y'all were little. Actually, some of the shows that y'all watched were kind of fun. Bear in the Big Blue House, even back when y'all were little. Some of the I think of like iCarly. I thought that was kind of a funny show. for you, some of the podcasts that you'll listen to, that one we were listening to, and it's like, hey, can you let's listen to the end of that when we get inside the house. So, I just think and now at the age that y'all are at, the ideas that y'all have, and I think it's refreshing and reminds you that, when you're in college or just freshly out of college, that is the time to be idealistic or to think that things can be a lot better than they are, and that's a good thing, that's what sort of pushes society to question what they're doing and all of that, and realizing that, whatever views I have, or, like I say, life can slap you around a lot, and, change what you think can or can't get done. But I think it helps to have those fresh eyes and fresh minds go, but we can do so much more, or we can be better. So I like that.
People call it like the power of youth, or the force of nature that is young people, I suppose. Now we've talked about moments you worried about me, but what moments were you proud of me, and also proud of your own parenting? Even were there moments where you're like, oh yeah, I raised a good kid, or can you think of any off the top of your head?
I'm not sure that I ever equated it to, gosh, Mom and I did a really good job, but I remember one of the times that I was really proud of you was when you had come back from one of the youth things, and you talked in front of the church.
Oh yeah, that was right before I went to Knox.
And you were so in your element. I mean, it was definitely one of those times. It's like, okay, he's comfortable up there in something. Doing public speaking is not something that most people are comfortable with. Yeah. And you're standing up in front of a church, and basically you held church for a while, in your own Matt style, of just being comfortable and talking to the congregation, and just feeling proud that you had that type of self-confidence, and that kind of presence there.
I was definitely nervous for a multitude of reasons. This may be a quick tangent, but I was not prepared. Or rather, I forgot that I was going to speak that morning, because I had spent the night at Andrews. So I was on like 2-3 hours of sleep, I want to say. It was not a lot of sleep. And I also was not wearing my own pants. I don't know if you remember this. I was wearing Andrews pants, which was a bit big for me.
Yeah.
And I was using one of my honor cords from graduation as a belt. Yep. So definitely not the most amazing of circumstances, but I still think that's one of the better speeches I've done. It's pretty good.
It actually showed up on one of our
I did knock it out
of our memories on Facebook, and I watched the whole thing again, and was just as impressed.
No, I watched it right as I was about to graduate, because that was sort of my opening statement before going to college. So I was like, I should probably watch it again.
Yeah.
And then now this is a question for you. Earlier I talked about like what aspirations did you have when you were younger. You said golf. What about now? What sort of dreams do you have now that you want to try to follow through on?
I just want to continue to try and help. Right now I'm involved a lot with coaching basketball, training individuals, and working with the distinction group. I just hope that I can continue to do that and have an impact on people, and in not a specific thing, but I just want to continue to learn. I like learning new things, and as a 65-year-old guy, I can say that being a lifelong learner, hopefully I'm not at the end of my life, but is a real thing. Yeah. And that I think it helps keep you young and alive, is being open to learning new things and not being intimidated by something that you don't know, that you just if you're interested in it, go learn it.
Yeah, being lifelong learner and just keep learning. Yeah, that's awesome. not to harp on the idea of you getting older now, that is what I'm about to do. Mostly because this podcast is partially just talking to you and talking to you about these questions that a child might have of their parent, but also I don't know. It's like a record for
Little time capsule.
Little time capsule. Yeah. So this next question is like kind of how does it I lost it. Yeah, what is it like getting older in general? Like
It's
and like things like more people dying or times changing, like the technology and like just things like that. More history, you know what I mean? What's it kind of like, I guess?
It's a lot different than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's better. I mean, I'm sure at some point I will feel old, but I don't feel old yet.
That's good news.
It could change tomorrow.
Yeah.
But getting older is fine. I just, try and be as active as I can. And like I say, active physically and active mentally as much as I can.
Yeah.
For as long as God will let me do it. And once I can't do that, I'll go with that too.
This is the next follow-up question. It's a bit of a harder question when it comes to the time that you are, I mean, with how fit you are, probably in your 90s or something, knock on wood, that you are approaching the end of your life, how would you kind of want things to be handled in that regard? Like, would you want an old folks home close to the end of your life, or would you want to get as many family around as possible when you were getting real close? Like, well, how do you want that kind of to be handled, I guess?
I mean, I'd hope to be able to, see everybody before I get too bad.
Yeah.
But after that, I think any visits at that point, like when my mom was on her deathbed, that was probably more for me than for her to be there. We got to see my dad when he was still very lucid, even though he only had a few months. I think after that it was Father's Day, and he passed away in August.
We saw him a week before he passed away. That weekend.
Okay. I didn't realize it was that quick, but so he was still in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to be in it unless something bad happens in any of our relationships. I just hope to be where my parents were, which was we've kind of said everything.
Yeah.
We said everything we needed to say while we were together.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we have to mend any fences, or it's like, boy, I wish I'd told you I loved you, or this or that. We've done stuff, so probably no huge wishes there, other than you always would like that one more time while you're not in the haze of morphine or something like that you can just tell everybody one more time you love them. And
yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And then we've talked about you guys want to be cremated.
yes.
And anywhere you want to be spread in particular, or do you care? Do you just want them to hold on to your ashes? Like what?
No, and again, I think a lot of that is for the living. I don't care.
Okay.
On that. I don't have any, I could get nostalgic and say, yeah, at the beach or in the mountains or this or that, but the reality is, we've done our stuff, so it's just.
So you hold no thought to what you'd want with the ashes to be done with?
Mm-mm.
I guess the real question is, well, I guess the living would probably want them, right?
Would you make a living monument to put it on your?
You can just throw them away if you want.
Figure out something to do with it. I know some people will like take bits, put them in like necklaces or something.
Mm-hmm.
People do that.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of things you can do with that. Because I'd want something, but I probably have a ton of stuff by the time you guys pass. That could be little mementos anyway.
And I mean, we still haven't done anything with my dad's ashes. Mm-hmm. My mom's are in some wall at a church in High Point.
Oh wow.
So I don't think think it's more important, where we'll be. Hopefully, we'll be in your head and in your heart.
Yeah.
Once we're gone. So the ashes aren't nearly as important as the other stuff.
Fair enough. The next question, I guess, with the heart and mind thing is, how do you want to be remembered generally? Like, or what do you think is like the bookend of your life kind of thing? What's the thing to be remembered, I guess?
Just, hopefully, that some people will remember that I helped them be a little better. The people that I worked with and the business side, hopefully I helped them be a little better, help them along the way that, hopefully I lifted people up more than I beat them down.
Yeah.
So that would be the main thing.
All right. Makes sense. And then this is a fun one as we approach the end. I only have 3 more questions after this one. It's just saying my protection has expired with McAfee, but I don't even use McAfee. It's just the thing that comes up.
Okay.
What would you say? I'm just going to say what I've written down. To someone listening to this, maybe me years later, or my children, grandchildren, whatever. Like, what would you say to them? Like a piece of advice or encouragement or just anything really? To me years down the line, Mason, anyone really. No pressure.
Just I'd pass along the words of the great songwriter James Taylor that the secret of life is enjoying the passage of time.
Secret to life is enjoying the passage of time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
Good song to listen to sometime.
All right.
Secret of life.
All right. I will have to give that a listen. I feel like I already asked this one. What are your hopes for me and Mason? It's like a repeat question.
To find your passion and hopefully to find people that love you. Life can be a lot of fun, but again, it can be challenging, and I think it's much better if you can find somebody to share that life with.
Yeah.
That loves you and cares about you. It's certainly we all need to be lifted up from time to time, and we all need to lift somebody up from time to time. So having somebody that you can share that life with, that can be that for you, and a passion that you can have as far as for your own life. That would be my wish.
There you go. I think that's a good wish. And then here's a fun one. Likes to are pretty fun ones. Just a funny story you may have, or maybe I'll make it harder for you. What's the funniest story you have of something that's happened in your life that's just funny? And that's a really hard question. You can just find
Okay, well, I don't know why this just popped in my mind, but I played golf all through school, right? Mm-hmm. We were playing the North Carolina Amateur, and there was a new course that had opened up at Pinehurst, and they didn't even have the road paved. You had to try not to get stuck on this real sandy road getting out to the course. And I played my practice round. I think I had 2 or 3 pars on the whole course, which meant I shot a horrible number.
Okay.
Very difficult course, and was staying at a hotel, Howard Johnson's or something, the cheapest hotel that was there. Drive to the course. I usually get there about an hour before my tee off time. Get out of the car, friends in the parking lot. How you're doing? Raised my trunk. My golf clubs are not in the back of the car. They're back at the hotel. I panic. Shut the trunk. Go zigzagging through the sandy road, get back to the hotel, throw the clubs in. Come back. I'm getting out of the car, opening the trunk and hearing last call for Ray Cagle on the number 10 tee. So I don't even have my shoes laced. I go hauling there on this course that I played horrible.
Yeah.
Hadn't had a chance to warm up, and just, and I guess the other funny part of that is a friend of mine's friend, Ken Miller, which your mom knows, and she will appreciate this, is that I've told this story to them, and Ken goes, "When you saw that your bag wasn't in there, what did you say?" And it's like, I said, "Oh my, I seem to have left my golf clubs." So, and he just howled at that. He just thought that was so funny. But I'm sure I said something much more colorful than that, but that was my answer. But that was a
That is funny.
funny, embarrassing story.
Of a very relatable one too.
Yes.
Like forgetting something right at the moment you need it most. And then the last one. If one, including myself, were to ever make a toast in your name, what drink should they toast with? Wine, whiskey. What drink would that be?
I guess a Merlot. I mean, that seems to be my drink of choice right now. But whatever you like, I guess. That doesn't matter what you drink.
Fair enough.
Just as long as you were toasting with a smile on your face.
There you go.
It's like, here's to him.
Yeah, I think that's always the goal. So a Merlot. All right. Well, that's this episode. I think we're going to eat dinner now. Or at least that's the plan.
Yep.
So I'll be back, hopefully, to interview Mom. All right. Bye.